Hello, everyone. Welcome back for another session in the series of our guidance webinars. We've talked about green brain. We've talked about anxiety. We've talked about mindfulness and how to make sure that we maintain balance through this really interesting time. So you know the guidance team, and we'd like to welcome back Dr. Farrington again, our resident expert, the one that we lean on along the way. But today's session is really going to lean in on students and helping students, especially as we enter into exam week. Now that may look different for upper school, middle school, and lower school, but when I think about it, as I think about stress and anxiety around, let's just say performance, those critical moments. And that's really what a test is. It's just a critical moment where a lot of that anxiety can really pull in. Now in the upper school and middle school, when there's cumulative tests, you're preparing for those in a certain way, and it really sort of focuses that energy. And that may look different in the lower school, and it manifests behaviors along the way. So since we're going to be talking to you pretty directly, and then maybe at the end of the webinar, we'll make some comments to the parents about how you can support your students through that. But so we'll go a little opposite, since the exams are probably carry a little bit more pressure in the upper school. I want to start with Tammy. Tammy, talk to us about how stress and anxiety sort of works, or how you see it, and then I'll just let you guys interact and work through on how we can advise our students about how to manage that performance.
Okay. Well, what I'm seeing recently, in fact, this week, I think the stress roller coaster has already started for upper school, because not only do they know exams are coming up and their teachers are prepping them for those exams, but they also are still, attending lectures, taking notes, working on projects, working on assignments. Most of our students not only, are academic students, but they're also athletes. So this end of semester, heading into the Christmas season, the holiday season, I think it's just coming from all areas. They are, what I see the most is not knowing how to manage their time. How do I get all this done? I don't understand, what is expected, or, I'm overwhelmed by what is expected. I know that, with COVID, and we have the CVC students, the way that they're going to have to approach their exams is going to be very different from what they've had to do in the past. So again, there's anxiety built up about that. I even think that the teachers are anxious, because it is a new way that we're going to be doing this in a lot of different scenarios. So you see the students, I guess physically, I see a lot of students doing the jittering, how you bounce your legs. And they're becoming very vocal. Like, I actually have students coming in to see me that I have not seen this entire semester, and they're like, I don't know what to do. I've tried to handle this on my own. They're just really, for lack of a better word, they're freaking out, and they have a lot of concern about how these exams are going to play out and how they're going to impact their grade. So,
does it look like that in the middle school, Jayme?
Yes, it was funny. It was very much resonating. In fact, today a student had a hoodie on, and she had little manipulatives that she was, fidgeting with. Another student said he would really like to have a stress ball or something to kind of get out that nervous energy. So yes, that definitely fitting in, like you said, just these students are trying to be balanced in all areas of their lives. So trying to look at quality studying over the quantity, trying to help them develop those quality strategies so that when they are focused, that is a quality study experience for them. So yes, absolutely that. staying in a positive headspace
Yeah.
when they're needing to study, when they're taking their tests, keeping a positive headspace there. And just retaining for our sixth graders, this is the first time they're taking a cumulative exam. So they've got the nervousness of the unknown, but then also just retaining this larger amount of information, trying to figure out the best way to teach them the storage and retention when they're working on developing good study strategies.
Now, Dr. Farrington, we're gonna wedge you in here because Jayme said something that I think's important as we think about it. We have 3-year-olds all the way through 12-year-olds, right? And even though in the lower school we have formative and summative assessments, there's a step up when you're taking a cumulative exam. So before we jump to the lower school, how does all that land on you? I mean, I know this is not the first time you've talked about stress and anxiety in teenagers, right? But what are some of those themes? What's some advice that the kids can really bring to bear on it?
Well, the first thing I'll just say is sort of when we're talking about anxiety and stress, it's always important to realize there's sort of that sweet spot of stress. So you want just enough stress to motivate you to study, to know that you still need to keep studying, but you don't want too much stress because then that study time is not going to be worthwhile, because instead of thinking about the information you're reading, you're thinking, what if I get this wrong? How will I ever remember this? And you're not really processing and thinking critically about what it is that you're studying. So a little bit of stress is good, but too much stress puts you in a bad space for retaining that information. So the first thing to really think about is just being equipped with those stress management strategies to help get you through. So whether those are things like stress balls, those fidget tools, anything sort of sensory to, squeeze a stress ball, get a little bit of physical activity to get the jitters out. We also focus a lot on like deep breathing or muscle relaxation skills. We do a lot of teaching of those. And something that Jayme mentioned earlier was positive headspace. We do a lot of encouraging students to use their inner coach. So what can you say to yourself to encourage yourself? To sort of change those thoughts about how I don't feel comfortable, I'm not ready for this exam, I'm going to fail it. Let's use that inner coach to change those thoughts, to keep us in a good sort of space to be able to study and retain information, to sort of manage that anxiety that comes with studying. Okay. And then the second piece of that, I guess, is the retention piece. So in terms of making sure that you're prepared for the exam, there are a lot of, relying on those good study skills that we all know work. There's a lot of research to suggest that cramming and all-nighters are not effective ways to learn. It's really, really challenging to keep your mind that focused on something for that extended of a period of time. There's a lot more effectiveness to these small chunks of studying over the course of like a week or two, rather than spending 3 or 4 hours the night before an exam preparing. And just other good study skills, in order to have that cognitive space to be able to study and learn information, it's important that we're also getting enough sleep and eating healthy meals and getting physical activity, and not just studying, but also doing other things to give us a break from that too.
No, that's good. So Jeff, so you've got the most challenging time here. So this is for students, right? So yep. Here's my challenging question for you. How do you take what you're working on with the Yeti, right? And with the lower school kids, and they've got critical moments too. They see stress and anxiety. How do you work with the lower school, and which pieces of that do you think really bridge up and are most relevant for like this exam time?
So, and I like what Amber said. She was talking about, those positive statements. So we just did a lesson and we did our green brain. I know we've been talking about this, but our green brain. So we have these shirts, and there's our Marauder with our green brain. And yes, Jeff, that's all very neat and cute. However, this is where it lands. We did a brain today with some of our students, and they were actually putting in the positive statements. Like, instead of I'm not going to do well on this, I'm going to do well. I can do this. And then also we are identifying, the other thing that we did with our green brain is we were drawing or writing in our green brain those activities, which we've been talking about. What are those things that we can do? My class is set up, the entire class is set up. So we're doing yoga, we're doing breathing, we're doing Yeti, we're doing second step. So we're talking positive we're talking positive affirmations, positive self-talk. So as far as it goes on up to 5th grade, I think just a couple of suggestions, and I may be taking a little bit of a turn here. This is just very practical. When you get home, you're getting a snack, you're taking a little bit of a break. These guys have been working very hard all day. If you walk down these hallways, and I know parents can't do that right now, walking down these hallways, they are focused, they are working. So taking that little break and then, talking with the students about, hey, look, I know you've got a little bit of work to do. You've got some studying to do. Let's, parents, let's use that pre-Mac principle. What is that undesirable? Well, I don't really want to get back to studying again or finishing that project. Okay, well, when you're done, you get to do this. So the undesirable first, let's make sure we're getting all that studying under our belt. That's going to lower our anxiety. And then we get to do whatever the desirable is, whether it's a game, whether it's, going outside, shooting hoops, whatever it is for each student. And I think that that's a way to kind of stay in our green brain. That's why I like the Green Brain Initiative, is because, we're taking steps. We're not waiting to the last minute. And even though we're in 5th grade, there are projects that they're working on. There are things that are have timelines and need to be done. So, our 5th and 4th, well, all of our lower school kids are working very hard. So just kind of piecing it piece by piece, but also taking breaks and recharging, as we've been talking about with our Green Brain team.
Yeah,
So.
yeah.
And Jeff, I wanted to just quickly ask you, or not ask, but you just said something about the breaks. And Dr. Farrington, I was just doing some research to see how long our students' attention spans are in general, as developmentally as they grow. And I read something that said 2 to 3 minutes per year of age. So if you're 10, you've got 20 to 30 minutes up to, so I'm looking in middle school, it's looking like 20 to 40 minutes of strong attention span. Would you say that's pretty accurate, an accurate measure of attention span before needing a break, a quick break, just a quick way to rejuvenate yourself?
I think it's definitely a good sort of starting point, so sort of anchor, and then just knowing that there are individual differences for some children. Our children with ADHD are going to have a shorter attention span than that allows, and it's not only going to vary by child, but their interest level in the topic. So a child who's maybe struggling in an academic area, or who's very disinterested in that academic area, it's going to be harder to sustain that attention, as compared to if that's their favorite class. They might be able to sustain attention a little bit longer. So there are little things that might cause that to vary, but I think that's a good sort of starting anchor to, let's pilot this time for how long we're studying before a break and see how well it works.
And really that goes into self-monitoring and being able to self-monitor and recognize. For example, notice when I do that in a book, when I'm not in the book anymore, I'm thinking about other things. So teaching the children to self-monitor and recognize when they're just not plugged in to the information, when it's just staying on the page, when the notes are just staying on the page and not becoming an active thinking process going on. Yeah.
Realizing that you've been staring at the same thing for 20 minutes now and it's not sticking.
Right.
That's a time to take a break.
Yeah.
Some of that can be hard to teach too. So at first it might be helpful to sort of set a timer this is our goal to stay on task. When you hear that timer go off, check with yourself and see how much you retained before you decide whether you need a break or whether you need to reset that timer.
I've read that, this was in regards to adults, but I'm sure it, is true for young people as well. It's important not to sit longer than an hour to 2 hours. To get up and move, even if it's just moving where you are, stand up, stretch, touch your toes, march in place, do the breathing exercises, something to get, to reset. And I do know that with some of the young people I've talked with this week, I have concerns. They don't necessarily eat and drink as they should, they'll tell you, I can go all day without eating, and they don't perceive that as a problem. So, I just think it's real important to emphasize to our students that super important to drink water, to have healthy snacks, you know, or even at some, you know, just you need to eat. You got to fuel yourself.
Yeah, I mean, science tells us the brain runs on glucose. That's food. We need food to fuel that brain.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And too much, you know, too much caffeine to study, too much sugar. If you need sugary snacks while you study, that does not really help your mood and your emotional state. What that brain needs is that healthy food.
And one other thing that I've done with my students that have come in with concerns about studying is trying to get them to see that the studying starts long before you have an exam or a test or a quiz. You know, when you go home at the end of a school day, you should, you know, maybe take your notes in the Cornell format, where you do the high points and then you go back in and fill in detail. And then when you get home, you rewrite that or kind of quiz yourself, you know, spend 10 minutes, 20 minutes a day reviewing what the notes were for that day. And if you do that every day, then that information is getting stored. It's not a last minute, I got to absorb all this.
Yeah.
And some students have said that's really helped, you know, that have actually implemented that.
It's a great strategy.
Yeah, I know for me, I mean, one of my strategies is, I mean, I'm a note taker, right? I've been taking notes, you know, along the way. But you're right. When I have a, you know, I'm not taking final exams anymore, but, you know, I have these critical moments, these things I have to deliver, and you want to break them up into bite-sized chunks. And the exams are the same way. I mean, for those students who have the heaviest load and who I think do it really well, they're very methodical and they figured out what their strategy is to sort of reverse design what has to be done and say, okay, well, I've got this exam or this test that's really big, right? In relation to wherever they are. You might want to start 2 weeks before, just chunking it a little bit at a time. And because for many of our students, especially those who are really pushing it academically, they're going to have several of those heavy duty exams. Now the school has modified its exam schedule. I know several years ago, 2 exams per day, you know, 3 days, you're just cramming them all in. And then the upper school, at least from my standpoint, the upper school exam schedule seems slightly more humane.
Yes.
And, you know, trying to really focus on, you know, under the balance umbrella of, you know, let's allow the students to be able to really display what they do well and bring to bear what they've learned and how they can perform. And it's really not about, can they survive the hamster wheel? It's, you know, can they think? Can they critically think about it? You know, can they be resilient? So I think the school has really tried to sort of partner and meet the students where they are so that they can be their best selves and can build that confidence through these to gain their own confidence and build that belief that they can achieve. And I love the piece about the self-talk because for as long as I've done this, you know, you bump into students and adults, the adults who are watching this, who say, well, you know, I'm not a math student, or I don't get math, or I hate public speaking, or, you know, I can't fill in the blank. You know, so much you can do, but a lot of it has to come from in here and that confidence. Well, just to sort of a shift real quick, because I know we'll be up against time after this, but what advice do you guys have for parents as they are trying to support their students? And obviously it's exam time, but we also want these webinars to be a little bit more timeless than that. In terms of stress and anxiety in general, what sort of, you know, Tammy, and let's start with you as well. What can
well, you know, I think we've hit on it, and I think parents could really help the students by having, you know, the bottles of water, the healthy snacks, the things that the kids can grab on the go, encouraging them, you know, letting them know that their, this is going to sound, their worth isn't based on what they do on these exams. There's so much more than this exam, that they know that they're studying and they're going to, perform, but not to wrap their whole sense of, who they are around these exams. Last, I think it would be helpful for parents, if the student's receptive, is to help them kind of plot out what they have to accomplish over the next 2 weeks. Because, they have different exams on different days. They have these final projects that are due at a certain day and time. Have that on a calendar or a whiteboard. I know a lot of parents have those, on the refrigerators or in the family office or whatever, just to have a visual, this is what you've got coming up.
We do that in the Milford household. We do it.
Yes. Because they got a lot going on. So I think those things, just being a presence for their, and be maybe prepared to listen to the stress, the anxiety that they exhibit, and just, be an ear and a receptive listener.
I second all of those things that you mentioned, Tammy. That could go really well for middle school. And I would just add for the middle schoolers, just to help them make sure they're getting a good night's rest. If you're helping them, if you're quizzing them at home, help them help them lift that information off the paper and make it more application based, help them develop those critical thinking skills. So you can really, that's the goal, is to develop strategies, to be a strategic learner. And it's an implicit thing a lot. And if we could help make that more explicit during your study time with them, that would be really helpful to them. And also, if you hear them making negative statements, help them reframe those, help them to develop a more positive mindset associated. But I really like what you said, Tammy, too, about you are not defined by this one exam. Help them to get out of that tunnel vision, to see the larger picture, and to really let them know that even though these are comprehensive, you have been planning and preparing yourself for these all year. And so just to kind of help them continue to build that positive mindset, help them with their strategies, help them with just planning out their day, when their study time is, making sure that's quality time. Yeah. I think that would be good.
I'm gonna piggyback on what Tammy said, and I think for the lower school, this is also applicable. Like last night, and I know my son's a sophomore, but he got in the car and he was very whelmed. I would say he wasn't underwater, but he was very whelmed. And instead of me, I always want to run ahead everybody and help them, and and I think I'm helping them. I said, stop. Okay, wait. Hey, how can I help you? What would help alleviate? With everything that you've got in front of you. He said, why don't we just pick up dinner now? It's 4 o'clock. Let's just go ahead and get that taken care of. There's a special. We go to Tijuana Flats. I'm not making a commercial for them, but we had that taken care of. He ate, we got home, and he started to kind of take one thing at a time. It was very helpful. So for lower school, I would say, hey, let's use that. Listen to your children, listen to what their stressors are. And I would say, I think typically, for me, I want to say, well, I had a part-time job and I had this, I had that. They don't know that. They can't live through your experience. So, and I know our parents probably aren't saying those things, but really just saying, hey, look, that sounds stressful. How can I help you? Yes. How can I help you alleviate some of that? How can we take care of some of that? And then also the nice thing is that, yes, we've got some plays going on. We had the Nutcracker last night. We may have some orchestra. We've got some things going on, but really a lot of those things have kind of leveled off, obviously, because of COVID and gathering. I think for lower school, those are a real concern when they've got so many different things going on. And I'm not trying to be, mean about it, but some of those things are just not happening right now. And I want people to have the opportunity to connect. But in a way, it's actually a little bit easier on our students that they don't have 19 things to do this evening before they go to bed, or 19 different activities going on. So in that sense, it's a positive thing for them. So they can wake up, they can be their best, and they work very hard here. So.
Yeah, and Dr. Farrington, I want to let you close this, but I wanted to comment. So Jeff, you had talked about, I'm sure no one talks about the part-time job they had. Well, this guy had to really grow out of that as a parent. So and if you've watched all these webinars, you know, I have 3 boys, all very different. And I had to grow as a parent in understanding that motivating son number 1, my strategy for that had to be very different for motivating child number 2 and very different for child number 3, all completely different individuals. And learning styles are different. How they're motivated is different. And here's the thing, how I need to approach it is different. And so it's work as a parent. And so I have to adjust my language. I have to adjust my expectations. And also remember that I may feel like I have it all figured out, which I know I don't, but these are teenagers. These are, you know, the prefrontal cortex isn't there yet. And part of the stress that we put on them and how we're training them is going to determine that brain development. So for my children, we've been able, and we're still learning, but we've been able to adjust our parenting styles. And this tag team with my wife and I, you know, I'm like, all right, I'm done. He's yours. And, you know, because we have to understand sort of that give and take to make sure that we're trying to be better parents, right? Through that development. So I think parenting is a continual learning process. And at least for the Milford household, I've always said that working in education, I believe, has made me a better parent because it's made me a more empathetic parent and understanding. By seeing thousands of students, I've been able to appreciate that they all have their own pathways. And part of being a great parent is, and a great educator, is to be able to differentiate through those. But anyway, all right, off my soapbox. Dr. Farrington, I'm going to let you close it down for us with any advice for the parents as to how they support their kids.
There have already been so many great points that have been made. So I'll, add on to a few of them. I think, the first is just be ready, know those signs of anxiety, be maybe a little bit more forgiving of changes in mood, changes in behavior. When we're stressed out, we don't always say the nicest things. People get a little more quick to irritate, and that might happen for our kids while they're anxious and worried about their tests. So just know that those are some signs of anxiety. Physical symptoms too, stomach aches, headaches, just be prepared for if more of those are coming, that might be anxiety. That might be that red flag letting you know there's something here. I think validate anxiety for our kids, yes, that is anxiety that you're experiencing, and I'm not going to dismiss that. I get that that's there. I'm not going to tell you not to worry because that's not going to change whether you're worrying. So how can I help you with that worry? Let's talk this through. Yeah. I think the point that was made earlier about just helping them keep perspective, praising that effort over that great outcome, praising the other wonderful things that they do in their lives, keeping perspective that, this is one academic semester, that's one test that you're stressed about. There's a lot more to you than just your grade on that test. So I think keeping that perspective and that other, another point that I know has been made, but just to sort of reinforce that, helping them to set up that study space, helping, looking at the family calendar and, you know what, we maybe had things that we were going to try and do and we're not going to try and do them. Or maybe this was our night to do some chores. Let's not worry about chores for this week because you've got a couple of big exams and you can take this week off of chores because you're stressed out and studying. And also, even the little things like having that water bottle available and not putting on their favorite television show while they're trying to study, those sorts of things, just to sort of help them to stay focused in that distraction-free environment, or, playing with the sibling so that the sibling's not knocking on their door to play with big brother or big sister. Things like that to have a good study space where they can really focus, and also reminding them, hey, don't stay in there for too long because your brain needs a break. I think those would probably be my biggest pieces of advice.
Great advice. All right, well, so students, remember, double shots of caffeine and honey buns, not a good idea for study break, all right? Sleep well, parents, or students and parents. A lot of great advice here. everyone's an individual, everyone's going to approach it a different way, but all of these are great strategies to find how they fit with you so that you can be your best self and perform well. So Dr. Farrington, thank you so much. Green Brain team, thank you guys. And students, families, until next time, see you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye, guys.